This video is brought to you by Sailrite. Visit sailrite.com for all your project supplies, tools, and instructions.
And here's one that's probably pretty common. A spreader took this out, and it took it out before. Cotter pin in the spreader. So it's been repaired several times over its lifetime. We are going to take this all off and patch the sail, and then we'll put the spreader patch over the top of that.
After Jeff's instructions on what we need to do with the sail, I'm starting with the spreader patch, and I'm going to go around the perimeter of it and try and take it all off. So I'm just going to take the seam ripper and I can slide right underneath these zigzag stitches.
Typically, spreader patches are just Insignia Dacron, which is an adhesive Dacron. It is not typically sewn in place. This sail has received so much damage from the spreader that it has patch upon patch that has to be ripped up.
It looks like we have almost all of the stitches taken off of this, so I'm going to peel the patch off, and you can see that it's been patched over patches.
What we're trying to do is get down to the original sail, removing all the patchwork that's been done so we can inspect it more carefully.
This is a patch, and this is a patch on the patch. That's what we want to fix while we're doing this. Here's the rip in the sail right here that was patched originally. And then we need to pull all these loose stitches out and get rid of all the extra threads.
There are multiple patches at this location. We're trying to get to the original sail.
Yeah, we just took this all off, and I don't know if you can see it in the video, but there's tears everywhere. So now we kind of see what was going on, and that's why I like doing this. When you have something there that, who knows, over all the years and all the owners that this may have passed through. But we're going to fix this and take care of this with a piece of material. We're going to pin this out, get it flat. We'll go seam to seam. So it'll be about 36 inches wide because this is 36-inch material, or 30 or so. But we're going to go seam to seam and out in front of the repair. And we'll go right over the top of the seam. So we'll cut our piece, match the seams. So on the seams, when all gets said and done, there will be 3 layers of material, not just 2. Then when we get that sewn in place, we'll bring it up to this edge, because we're going to finish this with a tape after we get all done. A Dacron tape about 2 inches wide, it looks like. But we're going to bring it right up to the edge, and then we're going to cut out the old part of the sail. And so it will be cut there. It'll look like just a new piece. It's kind of like a window. It'll look like a new piece of material right there, because it will be. And then we'll have a little bit stronger leech. We'll have a couple layers on here, and then we can, after we get that fixed, then we can attach our spreader patches and get that all taken care of.
So because this sail is damaged so much, we're going to take out this entire area and replace it with new Dacron. Then we're going to use Insignia Adhesive Dacron and place it over top of the new material as our new spreader patch. Here, Cindy is using awls, and she's placing them at the 4 corners of the area that will be replaced with a new Dacron fabric. I want to make sure it's nice and flat.
So I'm going to measure this just a little bit bigger than what I need, and then I can trim it off after I stitch it on. I have 37 wide there and 37 wide at the top. And I'm going to cut my piece about 34 long, and then I can trim it off when I get it attached.
And we were careful to make sure that the fill lined up with the leech, because that's what you want to do. That's the highest modulus direction of the material, which means lowest stretch of the material. You want to make sure that's always lined up with the leech.
The fill is always across the width of a bolt of fabric.
So I cut my piece 37 wide by 34 long, which is just a little bit big. So I'm going to line it up over here right on the seam where it will be sewn, and then come over here and mark the edge where I want to cut it to get it to exactly the right size. So I'll take it back to the table and connect my lines and trim that off.
Those lines are directly over the seam line.
I'm going to apply the seam stick on all 4 sides of this piece, and then we'll take it back over to the sail and lay it in place.
This new Dacron patch should be roughly the same weight as the sail, minus or plus an ounce
and
or so.
I want to keep the seam stick within the seam.
It is extremely important to use double-sided seam stick here to baste the patch in place over the damaged area. The new patch should be installed and sewn around the perimeter before the damaged portion of the sail is cut out. This sail is approximately 8 ounces, so we're using a patch that is a Dacron Super Cruise 7.4 ounce.
I'm going to lay this right on top of this folded edge here that's holding the line, and keep it up a little bit from the line, about a 1/2 inch.
We want to sew the edge of this patch down here along the leech, so we want to keep it about a 1/2 inch or more away from the leech line. A future tape will be installed along the leech at this location. Be sure that you're smoothing down the patch on a sail that's already smoothed down underneath the patch. If it has any wrinkles in either the patch or the sail, this repair will not be a good one. As you can see in this video clip, some of the awls have been moved to different locations. Thus, we can ensure that the sail was flat and the patch is flat on top of the sail.
Okay, before we start sewing, we're going to get the machine set up, and I want to move this over to a 5 and use the widest zigzag that's available and move this down to about a 4 to 5 millimeter stitch length and tighten up that screw to hold it in place.
We'll first sew along the leech edge, being sure that we do not sew the leech line, because if you sew the leech line or sew over the leech line, it's useless. This is probably the first best side to sew down because the bulk of the sail is not underneath the throat of the sewing machine. This ensures that our patch stays in position at least along this edge. When we have to manipulate the rest of the sail underneath the throat of the sewing machine, that double-sided tape plays an important role. If, when maneuvering the bulk under the throat of the sewing machine, that it becomes unbasted, you could typically baste it down without removing it from the sewing machine.
Now to go down this edge here, I'm just going to flip this around and work it through the machine as much as I need to get the seam sewn. And it's a little awkward, but it can be done.
Cindy is sewing this patch down the original seam that seamed 2 panels together on this sail. Here she will create a zigzag not once but twice. So 2 zigzag stitches right next to each other. Notice how she pushes the bulk of the fabric underneath the throat of the sewing machine. She also stops occasionally and smooths out some fabric that's approximately a foot away from the needle. That way you can work with bulky assemblies like this and not have to worry about anything besides just the few extra inches that you're coming up to sewing. You'll also notice that the patch did not stick well. It actually came up in a few spots. Here Cindy will explain what she's going to do.
You can see as I'm working with this, my other sides have kind of let loose, and we know this was all flat when we started, so after I do this seam again, I'm going to do another row of stitching on this seam. I'll take it out and flatten it out again and make sure everything is stuck for the seam over there and work with that seam, and then we'll be concerned about this top one.
So she'll start at the beginning spot again and sew a second row of zigzag stitches right next to the first. Be sure to reverse at the beginning of your stitch and also at the end of your stitch to lock the stitches in place.
For the second row of stitching, if I run that edge of my presser foot kind of along the edge of my original zigzag, they'll stay pretty well in line and still be on top of the original seam.
Okay, now that that row is complete, We have to rebase the patch in place since the double-sided tape did not hold when we had to push the bulk of the sail through the sewing machine. So here Cindy is pulling it out from underneath the arm of the sewing machine.
So we have this side sewn and the bottom
She's
sewn.
ensuring that the patch is flat up against the sail and then presses on top of that basting tape that was applied earlier to rebaste it.
The next seam I'm going to sew is across this top seam. So I'm going to roll this to get it under the machine. Okay, I've got it rolled a little bit and I can get some of that underneath my foot. So then I'm going to roll it some more. So,
the Sailrite Ultrafeed LSZ sewing machine is a zigzag straight stitch sewing machine that's excellent for sail repairs like this. It's a portable, heavy-duty walking foot sewing machine that's available from Sailrite. It is the world's best portable walking foot sewing machine. If you've got the time and you've got the patience, scrolling a sail like this to get it under the throat of the sewing machine is by far the best way to feed bulky assemblies like this.
before I take this all out, I'm going to slide it back and do another row of stitching along here. This damaged piece is going to all be cut out, so I want to make sure this is secure to the sail.
Skipping ahead, let's show how she maneuvers the sail to sew the opposite leg of that patch assembly. Cindy's going to just twist the fabric to make an L. However, you could remove the fabric from underneath the throat of the sewing machine and then scroll the fabric from the opposite edge so that it is parallel to the new stitch line that you need to create. It's up to you. After this patch is installed and the old damaged portion of the sail cut out underneath the patch, we'll be holding up the sail to inspect how the shape of the sail looks before we proceed. You'll notice that when any major adjustment needs to be made, she'll bury the needle by rolling the balance wheel by hand to the thickest part of the shaft, make the adjustments, then continue to sew. That way you don't lose your spot and you don't get needle deflection, which could break a needle. We're going to skip ahead. We won't show it, but a second row of stitches will be placed right along this row of stitches. Be sure that when you reach the leech, since the sail has a leech line, that it is not accidentally sewn in, otherwise it's useless. She's repositioning to sew the second row. Here it is complete. Next up, she'll show how to cut out the old portion of the sail underneath the patch.
Okay, I'm going to use this, the hole in the sail to put my scissors in and start cutting the damaged piece off. Just be careful not to cut the piece that you just attached to the other side.
Cut close to the zigzag stitches you just created, approximately 1/8 inch to 1/4 inch away. Be sure not to cut into the new patch you just applied.
And just cut it like that all the way around so you have the new piece underneath.
And here the old portion of the sail is removed. New patch is now what shows.
Now we have the new piece all set in and the damaged piece removed.
Chef Frank will discuss what's next.
Now we want to hold it up, and it's always a good idea to do this when you do any type of quote-unquote major repair where you're replacing quite a bit of the sail. On the bigger sails, can't necessarily hold up the whole thing, so we're going to just hold up as close as we can and see how it looks. And what we're looking for in the leech is see how the leech edge, you're looking for any major fall off, and that's pretty smooth. And you can't do much better than that. It will tighten up even more when we put the tape on and stitch it through, but it is a very good smooth patch.
We're going to use the 3-inch Dacron folded tape to finish this edge off again. And it goes up a little bit farther than the original edge, and that's okay. We're going to put the seam stick on it and zigzag at the top here. And we have an opening in the folded edge here that we want to cover up. And then we're going to continue it all the way down to here to cover up this hole and this hole also, and just make it one continuous strip.
The seam stick, 3/8 inch, is applied to both edges of this pre-folded Dacron tape, non-adhesive. Starting with one side, the transfer paper off the double-sided tape is removed. Then we'll carefully baste one side of the Dacron tape over the edge of the sail, ensuring that the fold is in the center, right along the edge of the leech.
This patch right here, there's just a little tear under there, and it's actually the stitching has just come undone. So we're going to reuse that patch. So I'm going to tuck that back down underneath there and then roll this over top of all of that, and I'll restitch this and stitch this edge.
Once you're happy with the way the tape is resting along the edge and that it's basted down securely, you can sew it in place using a zigzag stitch about 4 millimeters in length. Be sure to do some reversing at the beginning of your stitch and also at the end of your stitch. The black marker indicating that this patch needs to be re-sewn down is removed and sew around the edges that are no longer secured well. As before, when sewing next to the leech line or close to the leech line, do not sew it in accidentally. A second row of stitches will be placed along the inner edge of the Dacron tape. Up next, we'll adhere the spreader patch to the port and starboard side of the sail.
This is a piece that we cut out of the sail when we laid this patch in here, and we can see where the majority of the damage is, where these cuts are and where these scuff marks are. So to determine the size of our patch, I'm going to use this last line right here.
The front of the spreader patch should be roughly perpendicular to the sail's foot edge. The long edges of the patch should be as close to parallel with the horizon as possible, but this can be hard to determine, so it's often best to broaden the patch towards the leech, as we do in this video. Sometimes following the pattern of the scuffs on the sail will help to indicate the horizon.
I'm going to come all the way over to here because we had a tear right here, so I'm going to come over to this about 3 inches over from that, and I'm going to follow this line and make my piece angled, not for any particular reason.
Since we have a portion of the sail that's already been damaged, we can use it to reference where the damage is taking place.
So I'm just going to, where I don't have any patch under here, I'm going to make a little registration line where to lay the new piece back on over here on the sail, so I can keep it in line with where I'd like it to be. And I'm also going to make one right here at the end of this line. So my new patch will go from here to here.
Using that old sail that we just traced on, we can cut a pattern for the new Insignia adhesive Dacron that we will be securing to the sail for a spreader patch. Any kind of spreader damage that we can see on the sail stops at least 8 inches from this location. So here's where the end of the spreader patch will be, and she's marked that on the sail as well.
This is Insignia sailcloth, and this is what we're going to use. It's an adhesive, and I'm going to draw on the front of it the same pattern as what I just made with my old piece. And we needed one of these that's the opposite of this one for the back side. So before I cut this one, I'm just gonna flip it over. This one needs to be a couple of inches longer at the leech edge.
Those few extra inches will be used to fold over the leech edge. You may want to add an extra inch, making it 3 inches in total extra fabric.
This is the top 2 corners of my patch, and I'm going to round the corners so I don't have an edge here that can get caught and lift up easily.
This adhesive Dacron patch is not meant to be sewn. It will be basted or glued onto the sail. It is meant to be replaced if damage is noticed. So it is a sacrificial patch.
Here's my registration marks that I made when I made the pattern here and here. I'm going to draw a line here and across this top edge so that I can keep this in place where I want it as I peel the adhesive off the back of it.
Peel back about 4 to 6 inches of the fabric. Do not remove the backing completely. This adhesive Insignia fabric is very sticky. She will position the Insignia fabric at the marks she placed on the sail. It is very important to keep things very smooth and flat. Gluing the patch down has to start flat or chaos will follow. Rubbing with your hands across the fabric as she is here will ensure that air bubbles are removed, or using a flat object like this Sailrite patterning ruler can also help. Peel back the paper slowly and carefully and then begin to baste, ensuring that no air bubbles are present. It is best to apply this with a helper, as one peels the paper back slowly and the other carefully bastes it down flat. Using an awl in the seams will help ensure that the sail fabric stays flat as it is being applied to the sail. A flat and smooth surface like this tabletop or loft floor is perfect. Do not attempt to baste on a patch like this on a blacktop surface. There are too many porous surface bumps that have to be contended with. This patch is now secured. We can remove the awls, flip the sail, and work on the spreader patch on the other side now.
Now we need to turn it over and put the other piece on the other side.
The exact same process is done again. This side will have excess fabric that hangs over the leech that will be folded over the leech. We will not show all of this. We've asked for Jeff to help with this, so now it's a 2-person job, and it goes much faster with 2 people, as you can see here. Here's the extra 2 inches, which really should have been 3 inches, as discussed earlier. We will take out the awls and fold this over the leech edge, and that will complete our shroud patch protection on both the port and starboard side of the sail.
We should have made this edge on this piece just a little bit longer so that it came up and covered this one. We're not going to worry about that. It's really not a huge deal. So we're going to zigzag down the middle of this and catch both pieces to secure them.
The shroud patch is sacrificial and should not be sewn down, except for possibly along this leech edge, as it could catch on something. That completes the damage to the sail by replacing it with a new patch and a shroud or spreader patch replaced on both port and starboard sides. Here's the materials list and tools that we used for this sail repair. Be sure to watch our video showing how to inspect your sails for next sailing season, where Jeff Frank, Sailrite sail designer, explains how to check and repair a set of sails for the Islander 37 sailboat. For more free videos like this, be sure to check out the Sailrite website or subscribe to the Sailrite YouTube channel. It's your loyal patronage to Sailrite that makes these free videos available. I'm Eric Grant, and from all of us here at Sailrite, thanks for watching.